Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Community. And how fun. I get to do this in New York City with one of my fave business people. Hi, Meg.
Hi, Kristina.
I was recently on your podcast. We did this digitally.
Yes. I feel very honored and very fancy to be doing this way with you because I know also shout out to you. Thank you for the beautiful production that you do of my podcast. Unfortunately, my technology is not as agreeable this year. So time for a new computer, but it's a much different setting.
Well, we're in
my podcast. So
we're in New York for a Create and Cultivate event. And whenever I try to get into one of these cities, I always try to book a space and bring all of my fave people or shoot my shot with some other people. And so I'm so excited to do this with you today. And Meg and I have known each other through the Blueprint. We were just talking about for a year.
I know. I can't believe it. Time flies.
Time flies.
And how much we've evolved.
Yeah.
And others around us that have been a part of it. And just in other circles that have evolved from there. It's incredible. It really is. Yeah.
It's also so cool. So one, how much we've evolved. Two, how many times we've seen each other in a year. So many.
I know.
And three, it's so powerful when you get in the room and you see what's possible when you're in the room with people and how somebody's dreams. We were just talking about how, you're going to be on TV. I can't wait. And we've done business together. We produce your podcast, which I love. And there's just so much possibility. So it's so important. I always say this about getting in the room and building community, but it's also so great when you get to do it as friends.
Yeah. No, it's really magical and it's so funny because even though it's a year into the date, but I remember January 2023, I don't believe in resolutions. I feel they stress me out because then I'm if I don't hit that, business goals, fine, strategic business goals.
Yeah.
But I'm going to resolve to do this. I don't buy into that. Kind of January 1st, I get real first of year anxiety where I'm oh God, it's the new year. What's going to happen? But I remember 2023, I wrote down make new friends.
Okay, but why?
And then Blueprint, because you know what? I feel and you are well aware of what I do. So in my recruitment business where I help staff, individual teams all across the country, it feels very isolating because really for the past 13 years, I've been fully remote. So even though what I do in my business is very people focused and I'm constantly giving energy, there's not a reciprocation at times with that, right? Because it's providing a service and helping others move forward, prep for an interview, land a job, help clients find the right candidates, all of that. So I was kind of looking around and looking into my community in Boston, and I love fitness, and I think fitness is such a community, but it's sort of like a flash in the pan. You show up for a class and you do a class and you see friends and you're oh, that was a great class, and then everyone just leaves. And in Boston, honestly, sometimes we're not known for as nice of a fitness community, so people will actually run you over after class and be girl, get out of my way. And I'm oh, nice to see you. So for me, I'm gosh, there's so much I want to do in my business. And I feel very much alone. Even though I do have a small team in the agency, we're still all remote, as well. We maybe gather once a year.
Right.
Right. So I'm where is there an opportunity for me to get around some like-minded people that are doing things that I want to be doing or bigger? Right?
Bigger is better.
Bigger. And, I think from there, it really, I wound up meeting, our mutual friend who we love so much, Marina Middleton, and actually showed up at one of her events. And really since then, of March 2023, it really has just snowballed from there, where it's just like you said, shoot your shot. Go up and talk to that person. Maybe very much like Marina and Jacqueline's story. I would follow Marina on, Instagram, and she would kind of comment sometimes on my cutesy workout outfits. And then I just went right up to her at the event. I was Marina, I love you. I love all you're doing. And she's oh my gosh. And, it was really cool to create that relationship. And then from there, all the things that she was creating behind the scenes I didn't know about. And then Blueprint came out and it was oh my gosh, get me in the room with all those amazing women. It was also in Napa, say less. Hashtag moving to Napa. So it's crazy. You just say stuff out loud, but also you make it happen. But it's been something I've been thinking about for a while of how do I get new friends that have bigger conversations?
There's two things everyone needs to know about Meghan, and we'll get back to this. One, Meghan loves wine, loves Napa.
But in like a responsible way.
Responsible way, loves wine. And two, what am I going to say?
Oh, geez, the cats.
The cats. Meghan loves cats.
I'm obsessed with you. But also, I kind of did a little mini brand moment revision a few weeks ago where we all participated in St. Jude. And you kind of go around and you're like, what is someone known for? I'm like, shoot, I'm known for a lot of stuff. But I think immediately you think of me and you're like, cats, and like wine. I'm like, no, this has to change. I'm also like a master networker and like connector and people and all of that.
You're so much more.
I'm like, if anyone needs a connection, just call me. I can literally hook you up with anybody. But no, it's very true. Yes, I love my cats. I don't know. I told you some stories where now
I won't out you, but
truly, like we're locked in now. For
but this is the power of this kind of stuff, right? We were just talking about this kind of right before, like a group of us, we were invited by Chris to go, who's our mutual friend who owns an amazing PR agency, to go to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And we had this like really impactful 2 days there with like these amazing entrepreneurs. And I couldn't have dreamed that up if I tried. Right? Like 2 years ago, that would have never been on my vision board. Like, I hope a hospital, like, invites us to like an amazing event. Like, and we went, we were so moved. And now we have some like really cool stuff kind of brewing up behind the scenes there. But it was just so amazing. And I think when you get in those rooms that are like a little more expansive than your current room, it's so cool to see like how your dreams change because people are dreaming in a different way than you are. And I've always seen that with Marina, actually, because Marina and I met in a mastermind and we've been friends for a few years. And we produced her old podcast and we're quite close. And and when Marina was kind of getting all this stuff started, she's like, well, Jacqueline Johnson. And I'm like, no, I don't know who that is. And she'd be like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, create and cultivate. And also being in Canada, like we have a different like kind of scene.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no, I don't know Jacqueline. Meet Jacqueline. Jacqueline sold an agency before, Create and Cultivate. I didn't even know people sold agencies. I thought you just like build those and then you just toss them when you're done with them. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know about angel investing. You and I are both angel investors in the same companies. Like, so there's just so many cool things, but you never know that until you're in the room. And so I have a question for you, Meg, and then we'll get into all the good stuff that you do.
Yeah.
So you go to this event with Marina and you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm going to get into this like new energy. And I think a lot of people can relate to, I'm looking for more high level friends. And that's part of why I started High Vibe Women was I was like, people need more influence. Like we need more positive entrepreneurial influence with each other. So what would you say to that person who just feels like they're not in the right circle and they don't have the right connections yet? What would you say to that person?
Well, I would say, first of all, like going deep of like, well, what are your goals? Like, I always tell anyone, because as you know, I coach a lot of people too for career clarity and such, professional development. It's like, oh, I got, if they feel like they're so forced now, because everyone is doing it to go to these events, to get in the room. So I'm like, but why? If you don't have a goal in mind or a purpose to show up to that event and say, in this investment, what am I looking to get out of this? Like, who do I want to talk to? What conversations do I want to have? And not just small talk, because as we know, getting into some of the kind of typical rooms where you're around people, it's like, oh, what do you do? Oh, what do you do? Like the dreaded question. You're like, oh God, okay, let me give you my elevator pitch. But, for me, I would say, first of all, push yourself out of your comfort zone and pick a room. And start with something, like an event like Create and Cultivate or like High Vibe Women where, it's a little bit of a bigger audience.
Yeah.
So you're not like a mastermind where it's a bit of a smaller, more intimate group. And if you're a real introvert, that's going to feel heavy. You're going to go and be like really nervous, full of anxiety. I've been there before where you're like, everybody's new. I have nothing to say. I'm worthless. I mean, really, you go to this place, because I felt that too, where you get into these big rooms like, whoa, everybody is way beyond where I could even dream about being. But like, what are you missing out on by staying safe and in your comfort zone and having the same conversations with the same people going around, maybe doing a quick friends edit to say, are the people around me people that are, adding value to my life? And, listen, there are some friends that are deep-rooted friends that you've known forever that are just always going to be there. But I would say, there's a lot of like energy vampires or people,
low vibe
family members, right, that are going to keep you staying where you are because it's more comfortable for them to see you in that version of you. And I think that's where people get stuck because they're like, oh, if I grow and expand, so-and-so's not going to like me, or I'm going to make this person feel uncomfortable. Who cares? It's your life.
Yeah.
And I just see all these people with such big dreams. And I'm like, sometimes all it takes is like one conversation, or one shot, and like be strategic about it, and maybe start with some bigger things where you can really immerse yourself and be a bit of like a big fish or a little fish in a big pond. But from there, like, strike up a conversation with somebody. It really takes time, trust me, to get comfortable with it, I know. But I do feel like anyone who is holding themselves back is probably missing out on a lot.
Yeah.
And not to make anyone feel bad, but I'm just telling you, I would not be here right now if I hadn't done what I've did and have been doing, so.
Well, Meg, so many good things there, because even like we both love the Lori Harder. We love Lori. I know you love Glossy.
I have like 12 Glossies in my bag. Thanks, Lori. Love you.
Yeah, we love Lori. And I have her and I have like grown like a really nice friendship kind of over the last year, and I just like respect her so much. And we had dinner like a week ago, and we were talking about this, about like when you're early stage in business, like it can feel really nerve-wracking for you to get criticism, for you to get feedback, but actually like you just need to be like, thank you so much, because that is like helping me become the woman of the version of my head that I'm seeing. Like, it's not going to come without struggle. It's not going to come without hardship. Yeah. And so even I remember like one of the first things I used to, when I went to Chris and Lori's event, one of the first things they said, and it always resonated with me, and I said it on one of my podcasts a few months ago, and someone DM'd me last weekend and was like, you said this, and it like really struck a chord for an event, is like, don't actually try to be friends with the people on the stage.
Right.
Your people are
in the crowd.
In the crowd.
Yeah.
Like, they're your come up.
Yes.
So like you and I even being like in Blueprint, and I feel like we got way more connected kind of in this second kind of part of it, like where, when we went to New York and then I went to Boston, and like we had like such a good, time together. And we've like really grown our friendship in that way. Like, if I became obsessed with becoming best friends with Ali Webb, it wouldn't happen, right? Like, and Allie's amazing, but like really, like, it's about the power in the room. And so when you're invested in the people next to you, those are the people who have the opportunities you're looking for, rather than trying to find the people who are 100 steps ahead of you, who are going to like maybe drag you along. Like they might make a great introduction for you. But what you really want are the people next to you, because you're all growing together and like you're all on the same like journey.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a bit of more of an equitable energy share.
Yes.
Like I've heard this too before, I think in Lindsay Schwartz's podcast, of like networking with individuals, like maybe people that you've idolized or followed for years, and like the energy you go at, it's more of like an idol, right? You're putting this person on a pedestal. That's a different energy exchange, right? From when you're sitting next to somebody who could be even further along than you, but, maybe in the same space that's in the event to grow, could be looking for a business partner or a collaboration. And, it's more of an exchange versus the idolization of coming up and like, oh my God, I love you so much. I did it. And I think that that's amazing. And I feel like there are partnerships that come from that. But you're right. It's not about being friends with the ones that, are there for the big ticket, names. It's really the people in the crowd that can change your life and your business.
100%. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's pause that.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much to talk about all things Meg Houle, which is your Instagram name, but it's reflective of all the things Meg Houle is doing. So why don't you tell all of my listeners in my community about like what are all the things of Meg Houle? Because there's so many, and you are so great at all of them.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I mean, first and foremost, you kind of always struggle with the divide of the Instagram handles of, is it personal? Is it business? Who am I? I feel like a lot of business owners struggle with the identity, disconnects of like, your business should be one thing, you should be the other. But I just feel like holistically for me, I've always just been this like kind of big, shiny personal brand standing on my own. Even when I'm doing in my recruiting business, it's Meghan Houle. I'm kind of, my own name is tied to a lot of things. So, first and foremost, I am a lover of all things fitness, wine, cats, all of it. No, fashion for sure. I feel like I'm getting a lot of fashion inquiries lately too. I'm like, oh man, I need to step up my outfit games.
Yeah. Do you have this is big in the US, but not as big in Canada.
To know it.
Yeah.
I feel like they turned me down, because I like wasn't posting enough good quality things. I need like a full-time social media manager. That's another conversation for another day for Pinterest, but I'm just like, I get in spurts of posting and then I'm like, I'm too busy and then it goes away. But for me, otherwise, I mean, I love using my socials via Insta or LinkedIn for wisdom, inspiration, guidance, education. I mean, for the past 20 years, I've been truly in a service industry where I've not only led and managed teams for multi-million-dollar luxury brands, but now for the past 13 years on my agency side, I get to work with amazing brands, founders, CEOs, global brands all across the country, solve business problems with hiring solutions. So I'm a one-stop shop for all things hiring, recruiting, sourcing, vetting, bringing top talent to businesses, which, I think this year we've seen, some crazy activity going on in the world of recruiting. Definitely there's some very old school things that are still happening, which I'm working on some projects behind the scenes I know you know about to really give recruiting a facelift. But at the core, I love connecting talent to companies looking to hire because as we know, we can get into big rooms. We can say we want to do all the things. But if you don't have the right people on your team helping to drive that business, or if you have the wrong people on your team to drive the driving business that is taking your business in a different direction or upsetting the apple cart, so to speak, you're never going to get there. It all starts with the people piece. So I feel like at some point there's a job security in there because people will need to hire people all the time. But I feel like the way that we hire in exchange, kind of the energy there is definitely shifted and is going to continue to do so. But, that's one part of my business where I just love helping with the hiring and the strategy. And then, very passively on the side, and I take them on as I can, I do a lot of career coaching. Yeah. Which really blends beautifully because, if you're working with me as a candidate, really, you don't owe me anything. If I call you and I'm like, Kristina, I have a job for you. I'm going to change your life. Let's ride. And we go through the process. You have me every step of the way. I'm prepping you. I'm getting you ready. I'm getting you feeling great. I'm helping you with your offer. And then you go along and you get in your amazing job and it's great. But there are individuals that come to me at some points I might not have a job for them. Or I might not even work in their industry. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, and they want time and space. And I have a lot of free resources where I give people all kinds of prep tips and tools and resume help. But that one-on-one is, as we know, can be very life-changing, especially people that have been struggling to get a job, be seen. It is such an active work environment right now where it's really a client-driven market where you post a job and there's 100 resumes, 500 resumes that come through.
We find this too, Meg. You've seen us post jobs, but we'll post jobs that are $25 an hour jobs, and we're getting people with PhDs. Yes. And we're getting them en masse. We can only put up a job for 24 hours.
Yes. So and I think the frustration there is I'm not being seen. Yeah. I'm not landing these interviews. And I just feel like there's incredible talent that's getting looked over because the systems, again, are old and outdated. Stay tuned, people. But more to come on that with Meg Houle, another arm. But, I just, for the individuals that want to invest in career clarity, I call myself a little career matchmaker, career clairvoyant. We're taking a look at your resume and just being in this for so long, no matter what industry you're in. But I really focus on fashion, lifestyle, beauty, wellness, media, creatives, all of that at all levels. I can say, okay, here are some jobs you should be looking at, maybe seeing the potential in yourself that you're not seeing in you, which is the definition of a coach, but giving individuals actionable strategies to get out there and in front of the right people in a more strategic and meaningful way. And I don't know, I just feel like there's this misconception that everyone has to work with a recruiter to get a job. Raise your hand how many times you worked with a recruiter. I think a lot of people have luck with a lot of recruiters they have great relationships with, but I think others, you don't need to work with a recruiter necessarily to get a job. That's not the case. And also recruiters aren't agents for people. We're on the client side. So I think that there's sometimes a frustration there of locking conversations and recruiters not wanting to talk to people until they have jobs. And I'm like, well, it's kind of, there's only so many hours in the day. So for me, having this arm of my business where I can really help people get some good career strategy is also really exciting. And then I have a podcast as well called Pivot with Purpose, which is all about pivoting in your life to make a meaningful move, to shift directions, which really started in the pandemic. The podcast started in the pandemic when our industry within retail and service was obviously completely shut down and people were getting furloughed and laid off and like so stressed out. And I was like, okay, here's a platform. I shot my shot and I asked a production company, I'm like, I have an idea for a podcast. Are you guys kind of taking anyone new on in the network? And they're like, actually, we are. So literally like with no podcasting experience, I'm like, we're just going to do this. But it's been such an evolution of the podcast because you think about 2021 to now and some of those early conversations.
Yeah.
And then to see how people have evolved from then, I'm like, oh my God, it's so amazing. But I love sharing voices of hope, inspiration, education, where I just feel like someone coming to me walks away feeling better in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, what I love about what you're saying in so many ways is it sounds like you had your community asking you for a lot of face time.
Yes.
And so you created layers in your business so that you were able to kind of serve all different areas of your community. Yeah. And I think that's super interesting because something I'm really struggling with is like time, right? Where it's like I'll get so many DMs or emails as my community's growing, where people are like, I'd love to like jump on a 15-minute call. And I have a friend and she's like, oh, I don't do those. Like I don't do those. And if people want them, they can buy them. And I'm like, oh, that's not.
Is that friend me?
But I actually like really, I really respect that. Like it wasn't you, but like, I really respect that because I think, there's a level of like you have to kind of protect yourself.
Yes.
And I think, when you're doing recruitment and, people are looking for jobs, there's a big sense of urgency there, emotional labor there, right? Like these jobs pay for meals for their family and pay for their careers and all of that. So like I can appreciate why it's not you know what I mean? Like why it's like you need to create those levels. And I think that that's a really smart way of like, talking about how you serve people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, listen, in the pandemic, like obviously we had a lot more time. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of intro calls that I really tried, but try to fit in, which were great. It was great to kind of connect people on that level because the way I stand in my agency is I will lead the client side. Like I do business development, I'm client facing, I'm like bringing in new clients, but I don't always get to recruit on all my projects because I have people that help me. But it's like there are times when I am on the client side and I'm recruiting for it. And I remember how fun it is to like capture that candidate, in a moment of like serendipity where I reach out on LinkedIn, or reach out via email and they're like, oh my gosh, Megan, I was just thinking about a move. And I'm like, cool, let's chat. So I feel like in the pandemic where I was able to open my calendar and like reconnect with all these career professionals, it was really great. But I found myself, Kristina, saying the same things over and over, the same problems over and over. And I was like, okay, this needs to be in a bigger audience platform situation. Yes. And that honestly is what thrusted me into my own self-development of seeing this need by opening my calendar, right? And being accommodating as I could to be like, I'm going to get certified as a coach. I'm going to start my coaching practice. I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to start a blog subscription on LinkedIn, which is free, but you can go to my Pivot with Purpose LinkedIn newsletter and I post in there all things about careers. I have templates. I have everything where I'm like, there's a community to serve that still doesn't owe me anything that I can repurpose all this content that just lives in my soul that I'm like, why not put it out there and help people for the greater good? Which, of course, the one-on-one private is an investment because, again, that's like high touch, high level coaching. Yep. And I was just saying this in another podcast recently. It's like when I first created what I call like my career roadmap workbook. And I had my first paying client ever when I had started my coaching program. Like I was up for like 24 hours making sure the value of that workbook, I was like, someone is giving me their money. And then I'm like, oh my God, should I just refund them? Like, am I ready to do this? But the absorption that came from that and like the strategy and thank you so much. And I, was seeing them taking notes. I'm like, oh my God, so it just, I don't get that on the recruiting side because you're more about like getting somebody into the finish line to like get an offer and it's your job. But like to see like a real transformation in somebody, shift careers, I will tell you, and not to like toot my own horn because there's definitely some humbleness here, but I have to say a success rate is almost 99% is like if you are struggling to find a job and you don't want to do it on your own, and you want to make a mini investment, because I do have tiers now where I do 30-minute calls, an hour calls, or there's bigger packages. Every single person, if not maybe a few that are around that are maybe doing other pivots, have gotten a job, Kristina, have landed in jobs in like 3 to 6 months. But that's not like from a magic dust fairy coming down and being like sprinkling like, oh, here's your job. You got to put in the work. And what I provide is those tools and resources and accountability and strategy. But investing in anything is all the energy you put behind it is what is going to be the outcome ahead. So diversifying my business was the best thing, but it also came out of the pandemic of opening up my schedule and seeing a bigger need to serve where you're right. I mean, for months and months, there was no way I was taking 1,000 like 15-minute calls all day. I would be on the floor. Plus, I invested in the coaching program, which was like 16 weeks because I wound up getting a master accreditation through the World Coaching Institute. So I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. That's just kind of like the Meg Houle way. Right?
All things Meg Houle. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. Wait, when you have your next venture, which we won't talk about today on this podcast, not yet. And when you launch it, we'll bring it back. I'll come to Boston. We'll rent a studio like this and we'll do this.
Oh my God, it's going to be amazing.
Would we call it More Things by Meg Houle, or are we still All Things?
We're calling it a Meg Houle umbrella.
Okay. Just wanted to check in.
Yes, because what is going to be transpiring, which, I can't talk about the bigger things, but, my goal next, and I think the inspiration I've gotten from getting into these rooms, from being around people like you, from investing in multiple masterminds, being around all these women, like running these incredible businesses, is like, there's more, right? And how do I continue to diversify myself and create this bigger audience and community while still solving problems? So my problem I solve is hiring people, all of that, careers, whatnot. So, I'm working now on building kind of like a bigger entity business that will go across, that's really going to be across recruiting, career coaching, professional development, retain search, hopefully some recruitment education in there for consulting for businesses, where I really want to be this like one-stop shop for all things hiring, careers, and executive professional development. Whether you're looking for a job, looking to hire for a job, looking to develop yourself in some way. And I do think in here, Kristina, like literally, these are the things that keep me up at night. Having like a community resource page where so many people constantly are coming to me of like, who is the best person to produce my podcast? Who do you know that does PR? Who do you know that does operations? Who do you know? Like, we could literally name like 8 people that we all know right now. I'm like, I need like a Jenny's list or a Craig's list for like Meg Houle, because in this bigger entity of all things hiring and people, like I'm a master networker and connector. I'm like, who do you need to know? Like I was just saying, like, who do you need to know? I will like find them for you and I will try to connect you in so many ways. Like, I just love people. I think getting curious about people is like how you make friends and expand. It's not about you. It's like, what are you doing? It's about being curious about others. So I don't know. There's so many things, but there's this like big umbrella coming that's just going to be this like one-stop shop for like, right? Like,
okay, so I have a question for you, and it's so funny because you asked me prior to this interview, like, what can I prep? And we came up with a topic, and we're not going to talk about that topic. I think the topic might be dead, and you might have to come back. Because when you call yourself a master networker, like, so I have never called myself that, but I would say I align with this message.
Yes.
Like, even yesterday, I had dinner with somebody here in New York, and they were like, I need to know like how you scaled your business so fast. And I was like, I have no information to tell you other than that I networked like a fiend and met people. And more than networked, I made connections for other people. That's always it for me. It's like less about like what Meg's gonna do for me. It's more like what I can do for Meg and then Meg's connections. And so I'm curious for you, like, is this something that's innate? Because people ask me this all the time and I'm like, I don't know. So you could say the same thing. Is this innate for you where you became a master networker? Like where, and like, what are your values around networking and building community? Because that's ultimately what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think to my core, I've always been in service.
Me too.
I think it's also firstborn female child, a first of ever. So first grandkid, first daughter, first everything, where I'm the first, right? So I think in that, comes this commitment of excellence. Where I am like one of 4 children in my family. No, seriously though, where, not to like let all the beans out, but my parents were divorced at a very young age.
Yes.
I was literally a latchkey kid in the 80s making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at 8 all alone, where I watch my nieces and nephew now. They're like 16. They're like, Mom, get me a drink. I'm like, you're 16.
Yeah.
Like I had 4 jobs when I was your age.
I'm laughing because
we won't go down this rabbit hole, but also,
I'm laughing because yesterday I was talking and I was like, listen, I'm too young to die. I have way too many of my parents' expectations to still live.
Yes.
Like so many. They have so many expectations for me I haven't met up yet.
Yes. Yeah. And I think in mine, it was this environment where, it was a little chaotic and I wanted to be the golden child to like not ruffle feathers, like get good grades, play the sports, like work jobs, like just, be an overall good human. I think to my core at a very young age too, I was acutely aware of like what was going on around me. And my dad has a very like effervescent personality. He was like a basketball referee. So we grew up like traveling and like meeting all these like people through his like basketball and all the things. So I feel like I kind of saw my dad like just having these conversations, but also like throwing yourself into a service. Like I was in a restaurant when I was 16, like helping random clients, like cutting bagels. I don't know how I still have like 5 hands or five hands on each hand. So that's 10. 5 plus 5 is 10. Great. I can do math, guys. But I'm like, how are they allowing, like you think about like what we did back in the day that would never be allowed now. I'm like, oh my God. But you get comfortable talking to strangers.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like, I knew, in a very independent way that I was brought up that no one's going to do anything for me unless I'm getting out there and hustling myself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the life I've lived, Kristina. Like absolutely nothing has been handed to me. No way.
Not one Louis Vuitton.
No way, girl. I don't even have one because the discount was so terrible when I worked there. I was like, I'm still poor. I can't do it. But like, I read this thing today with like a social post I did of like the phoenix rising from the ashes and not to be like whatever, because I still know there's a lot of privilege, but I do feel at some points with a lot of adversity I went through, like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. Not like literally, but like as advanced. Like I think people that knew me back in my 20s, like are seeing me now and they're like, whoa,
yeah,
she did it. She climbed out of the hole. She climbed out of toxic. She climbed out of all kinds of craziness. And here she is, because I'm just not somebody that settles. No way. So I think in that, and then, moving on to working in retail and Louis Vuitton, it's like you talk to all these celebrities and people and, you just get comfortable being around people and charismatic, and then people pull you into things. And I think, honestly, it really comes down to your personality and the reciprocation of somebody like wanting to help you, which then like connects you with a lead. So it's almost like, do you know Pokemon or like
Yeah, my husband's obsessed.
Okay, well, it's like collect all the Pokemons. Like,
yeah.
I feel like I've been collecting just like resources and names over the years. And now, oh my gosh, for 13 years, I've been working like in full-blown agency mode. The amount of CEOs and people and, whatever, who cares who I talk to. But I just know everybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, who do you guys need to know? I'm like, you want a brand partnership? Who can I connect you with? But that comes from the fact that at some point I've either, tried to help that person, supported that person, showed up in that way, however I could for that person, even if they didn't need anything from me. I'm just like a champion for people. If that sounds like very strange or weird, but I am somebody that is clapping for everyone, and it's not disingenuous or inauthentic. Like, me very well. I mean, I absolutely will tell you if something doesn't feel aligned, and I'm very proud of myself in the past year or so that my voice has gotten a lot louder with that. Like shedding that people pleasing and being like, no, I'm good with this. But I just feel like starting in service and like really, kind of growing through small conversations and bigger conversations. It also just comes down to be fearless. Like asking the worst thing someone's going to say to you is like, no, not right now, not aligned. But if you leave a great impression with that person, there's always an opportunity to come back and cultivate that relationship in a new way, maybe at a better time. So that's how I coined myself a master networker. I mean, retail, hospitality. I mean, we're in New York City. Like, who do you want me to call?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
I love it.
Right? But also, it's not an abuse.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask
ask.
you. That's what I was going to ask you. So,
right?
Because this is something that I think about a lot where, like, even in running my own events and, like, doing all these things, like, I'm always, like, so scared to ask people for things. Like, I'm always like, oh, I just want it to be, like, such high value and I want to, like, give and I want to make sure they feel good and I want me to feel good and I want it to feel like win-win. So for, I think both of us, like, something I feel like we're both kind of talking about is this, like, equal energy exchange of, like, I don't ask typically until I've given.
Yes.
That's been kind of my approach.
Yeah.
And if I do ask without giving, I'm asking with like a super like open hand of like whatever we can try to dream up together and like how do we find a win-win and how do I over deliver? And so I'm curious for you, like how do you manage that piece where really managing that, because I'm sure like you have all these great connections and I have no doubt that people come to you and they're like, hey Meg, can you introduce me to this person or this or whatever? Like, how do you manage all of that?
Yeah. This is again coming. I need like a Craigslist for Meghan Houle. It's been recently because I feel like how front-facing I've become even more so over the past couple of years has warranted people in the DMs asking for like resources around everything. And it's a lot. I mean, I'm not going to say my phone doesn't ding like constantly with like all kinds of like nuisance and nonsense of like family members like, what hotel should we stay in? I'm like, oh my God, am I like Ask Jeeves? Like, I think I'm the new version of that. Do you remember that? Where it's like, it was this like waiter and it was like Ask Jeeves and it's basically like a Google, but like a fancy part of like
yes I was probably like 7 years old.
That's fine. It's fine. It still is there, but I don't until like recently I'm like, okay, I would say like an ask for a partnership. The thing is like if I'm recommending you, if I'm making the connection, like I ask that you like take it seriously and follow up, because fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, like, no, it's not happening. So I really, I know it sounds weird, but I kind of vet out the asks.
So how do you say no when you get an ask that's not aligned?
Yeah, I mean, I will be dead honest. I mean, I will say, because sometimes, it's really asking for something very like intrusive or specific. I'm like, I don't think I have the right relationship with that person to be able to coordinate something like that. However, I always go to the person first, like before I try to make a warm intro.
Yeah.
Say, is it okay for me to connect you? And sometimes this is what the person's looking for. And sometimes people are super generous and they're like, oh, sure, let's do it. And then other times they're like, maybe that's not aligned, but, maybe I know someone else or maybe, so it could lead down. You just have to be honest.
Yeah.
And again, I think that there are definitely people that will try to like just continuously like tap into your resources. And it's just like, okay, I've definitely done a lot and I need you to kind of continue to take it from here, which doesn't happen often, but I just feel like you have to be serious. And maybe for you too, like if you're going to introduce somebody to someone, like show up, be professional, respond to an email, like get back to people if they're like trying to share with you your time and then you like wind up ghosting someone and they're like, hey, I never heard from your friend. And I'm like, sorry, I know. I'm like really strategic, but I don't say no often because I really feel like it's just so fun to connect people. But I definitely like really tap and vet into like the why, like what are you looking for, so I can make sure it's like maybe the right time and space or person for you. Yeah,
it's interesting because I think a big piece of what I find so hard about like this space is often that like community like is so, we cultivate it so much. Like we put in so much work and there's just so much that like we need to be doing. And so I take my relationships like so seriously, like, and I've cultivated some like kind of high level relationships that I'm really proud of. And I like people will be like, oh, like, do you know, like, I always laugh because it's, like often people will be like, well, could you introduce me to Chris and Lori? And I'm like, DM them. Go DM them. And they'll be like, oh, do you have Chris's number? And I'm like, I can't. Like, but like, but the way that like, you create like, and it's not even just Chris and Lori, like Jacqueline and Marina, like great people who we know, like us, like, like all of our high level friends, like the way that you actually cultivate those relationships is like one-on-one, and you build that relationship and that comes with time. And sometimes an intro can really fast track things. But I think like, I don't typically ask for intros. I'll say this is a need I have, and if people are able to like support that, that's great. But if like I know someone's like, I was joking with a friend yesterday. She said my daughter works at Pinterest. It was like, okay, we need to get her to sponsor my event.
Yes,
I'm not going to turn around and be like, hey, can we talk to your daughter? Like that's not me.
Yeah.
So I think it's also knowing that. So okay, my last question for you, Meg, is if somebody wanted to build community like around themselves, like they maybe don't feel like they have the network that they want. They're not growing it in the way that they want. What would you do to try to build community?
Yeah. Well, I would say like, again, what is your goal? I think that, you and I could have easily each have 7 different types of communities. Yeah. I could have a cat community. I could have a community for wine lovers. I have a career community. I think to the core of it, it's like, what's the goal? And also like, how are you serving those people that you're cultivating in that community? Like, what are you going to be known for in that community?
Yeah.
Right? And what I've seen recently, maybe with the inspiration of, a lot of these events and things coming back to life, are these kind of like microbursts in these cities of women that are, doing like babes in business or women in business in Boston, whatever, that we typically, I don't know, Boston gets a little bit of a bad rap for like a cool city, but I promise you we're actually really cool. Wherein, building the community around the who you're serving, who is that audience? What are you giving them? What are you known for in that community? Like, that's where people like, it's credibility.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're like, just even like Instagram.
Yeah.
Like when, you're like, follow me on Instagram. And what does it say? Like 5 seconds, someone is going to quickly know whether they're going to follow you or not.
Yeah.
And what that messaging is. So it's like, what are you going to be known for in that community? Like, how are you going to like get them to like really buy in? And that's how you start to like cultivate this like really great people of like, oh my God, Meghan, she's like going to go live and talk about career things. She's going to do this. And then the people that maybe miss out hear about the high value or like great conversations you're having. And they're like, wait, I want to come next time. So maybe just like high vibe women, then you start to create this FOMO and the FOMO gets real. It's like, we all want something that we feel like we missed out on or like can't have. Yeah, that we really wanted to do.
100%.
Right? And like in that, I feel like then there's growth of like, oh, I have to go to the next one. And now I'm going to sign up for the email and the newsletter. And, it's like a snowball effect from there. But I feel like it just starts with a goal.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh. I love that. Yeah. Especially because I think it's really just about making that choice and like making that dream.
Yeah.
Oh. Right. Meg, I love you. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation here in New York. It was such a beautiful studio. So I'd love for you to tell people how they can get a hold of you. We'll definitely link our episode that we did together on your podcast. That was such a good day. I got so much good feedback.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do this again, which we definitely will. But tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah. The best way, I love Instagram. So you can find me at all things Meg Houle, but also meghanhoule.com. I have my website, which is kind of a one-stop shop that will show you all the career resources. If you're looking to hire for your team and understanding what that process looks like to work with me, we have the podcast Pivot with Purpose. Like really everything is on my socials or my website.
Yeah.
Message me, email me, ask me for something. I got you.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Well, go follow Meg, go check her out. And I'm just so excited. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
So fun.
Love you.
Love you too. Thanks so much for listening to Community with me, Kristina Bartold, and I'm just so excited to continue the conversations. If you're looking to grow your community and learn more about social, join us at thesocialbusinessclub.ca and use the code podcast to get your first month for $1. Share this episode with your friends and on social, or leave a review. It means the world.